Okay, so I'm sitting here with Dean Hall, and we're going to talk a little bit about DayZ. First of all, how's development going? What has recently been added to the game?
Sure, so we just recently finally managed to get a big update to stable. Had a whole bunch of exciting new weapons and things like that added, but I guess the most important thing was we started fixing some of the serious bugs that were coming into the game. Starting to look at we had a really serious bug creep in with desync and lag, and that was really the most important thing that we fixed there.
Okay, one of the things that we were talking about yesterday, since you started with the mod all those years ago, a lot of other games have kind of taken advantage of the popularity of the genre that you've kind of pioneered. How are you making sure that you kind of keep that individual DayZ flavour whilst kind of trying to stay ahead of all the other games that are kind of going for the same market share?
I guess the most important thing for us is that DayZ is kind of true to DayZ, and you know the amount of sales we made is sort of good enough for us to continue with doing that. So I guess there's not much need for a competition, because I think if you start competing, you can sort of turn the game into something it's not, and that's why I think for us focusing on the survival and the immersion elements are really the two most important things for us. So yeah, it's just keeping really true to that hardcore survival, that hardcore permadeath, because that's kind of what DayZ is. And I think that a lot of the other games are actually exploring other areas that we can't explore, so I think that's actually quite good, because it means that if someone plays some of those other games, they might even be more likely to try out our game, so it's kind of symbiotic almost.
You've done really, really well with the early access. How's that injection of funds affected the team and allowed you to kind of explore new areas that you might not have originally thought to look at?
Well, I guess it did make us feel that we really do have to put the good effort into the game, but they talk about the mythical man month, where you can just smash a whole bunch of people onto a project and it can actually delay a project by putting a lot of people on it. So what we've had to be careful of is how we upgrade the number of team members in such a way that it's sort of manageable for the rest of the team.
Do you feel like there's any drawbacks to early access, or is it really an entirely positive approach to game development?
Well, I think there's drawbacks to anything. There's drawbacks to the traditional model, there's drawbacks to Kickstarter, there's drawbacks to early access, and also early access is still quite new, so that means that both developers and the community as well can be a bit confused about what it actually means, and I think we're all still trying to figure out what it means and what's best to do. But I think one of the most important things is to actually, when you go to early access, is to have a fun game, a game that people can enjoy. It might crash very quickly and it might have a bunch of other bugs, but if it's fun, then people are like, wow, it's good, I can't wait to see what happens. And that's sort of the emotion we wanted to generate, and I think we've managed to pull that off. So now it's really a matter of delivering on the promise.
Conceptually, what would you say is the biggest challenge in DayZ? What is the thing that is creating the most obstacles for you to realise?
I think it's because we're trying to turn what is effectively a sort of first-person shooter simulator into something like an MMO that presents a whole bunch of challenges and issues, because we've had to redo how the network code works and redo whole elements of the game, and when you do that you can fundamentally break it, and it can take a long time to sort of fix it and put it all back together. And we're trying to do that at the same time as keep a game working for the community. So that's a real challenge. It makes scheduling very difficult.
Hypothetically speaking, what do you think would happen to the dynamic of the game if you were to just completely remove the zombies?
Well, I think one of the problems is the zombies do provide sort of an antagonist. Maybe not so much for skilled up players, but definitely for a player who's starting a new character, because they don't have much to defend themselves. I think that You know, and Rust has done it. They've gone and removed their zombies. So for us, I think though a lot of people play DayZ because they want to experience the zombie apocalypse and they want to see how they would do as part of that. So they're kind of indelibly linked to it.
So specifically, could you tell us why you went for zombies? What was the reason behind their inclusion? Why did you want to make a zombie game?
Well, part of it is that I guess the setting and what happens is very important. So when you're playing a game like that, you might not be playing with lots of people all the time. So you need something to do rather than just go around and collect gear. You need a sort of tacit risk, and that's what the zombies as an antagonist provide. They're brain dead, so the AI is reasonably forgiving then, because it means you can have not so good AI and large numbers of them without getting in too much trouble.
The world that you've created for the standalone is kind of similar but very different at the same time. What would you say is the most striking difference between what was there in the mod and what you've now got with the standalone?
I think that's pretty easy. It's the inventory system. So in the mod, obviously with armor, it wasn't really that important what you were wearing or what this was or what that was. But with the standalone, and it's very important whether you found a jacket, whether you found a vest, weapon, that kind of stuff. And so we have a very heavily customizable inventory system, clothing system with DayZ that really allows us to expand on those elements.
Okay, when we interviewed you for Gamereactor magazine a few weeks ago, you mentioned that you'd had talks with Sony and Microsoft. Have those talks progressed? Are we any kind of closer to seeing DayZ on console?
Well, I think all the console manufacturers are interested in DayZ, and rightly so, because we've sold a fair amount of units in a short space of time, and it's a game that could potentially transfer quite well to the consoles. And the consoles are trying to sort of break new ground with where they're heading, because I'm sure there's a lot of console gamers out there who they would have loved to have been part of, say, Minecraft when it first came out and things like that. So really the bottleneck is us. We need to get the PC build to the right state where then it can pull across. And I think everybody recognises that there's no sense in starting to pull something across that's dramatically changing all the time. So really our focus is on delivering the right stuff and answering all the questions as we go through the early access with the PC.
Okay, recently you announced that at a certain point, when the time is right, that you're going to leave the project and go off on your adventures. How do you think, at what point have you got an idea in mind about when you'd like to leave, and at what point will that be, and how do you think that will affect the project?
Well, I'm hoping that it will be at the end of the year. I mean, it's clean just from a bureaucratic standpoint. It's the end of the year and it's the end of the visa period and that kind of stuff. I think as well, it can have an effect on the project in a bad way. We've just got to make sure that and that's kind of the reason for letting people know that that's coming, so that everyone can sort of prepare for it, and we can make sure the project's heading in the right direction. I also think as well that there can be a certain point when it's actually, you can start doing damage to the project. Like I like to change things, I like to make new stuff happen, and I think at that point we do need to start keeping focus on the game and start just polishing and refining and that kind of stuff.
Last time we interviewed you for GRTV, you told us you were planning on climbing Everest, and then you went and climbed Everest. What's the next kind of personal challenge? What's next for Dean Hall?
Well, I think the big challenge at the moment is to finish off DayZ. I think that's enough of a challenge, so I'll kind of look at the next thing at the end of the year. I want to set up my own studio one day and back in New Zealand, so that'll probably be a pretty interesting challenge, but certainly what I've got right now is keeping us busy enough.
And what's the roadmap ahead? Are you still kind of looking at releasing beta towards the end of the year, start of next?
Yeah, so I think we'll finish off our beta at the end of this year, but we probably won't release it straight away. We'll put it into a closed test cycle and then release it early next year.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Cool. Cheers.